Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the AI Argument with myself, Justin Collery, joined as always by the ever-frightened Frank Prendergast. Frank, welcome to Friday.
How's it going, Justin? Yeah, I'm in a secret, undisclosed location today, hence the weird virtual background.
Do you remember the Simpsons episode where he went out into the forest and he took loads of drugs and his eyes sort of went, "Woo, I feel love"?
Was it? Was it the forest? Was it the forest, or was it a chili? I remember him eating a chili and having a wild hallucinatory experience.
Yeah. You got that sort of look about you. Anyway, it was Mr.
Yeah,
Burns, I think it was.
you know why that is? It's because I'm not wearing my glasses, and you can actually see my eyes always look this crazy, but I normally hide them behind glasses. Justin.
It's great to see. We can see into your soul this week. Um, well, I don't know. Do you think we're heading into the singularity or not? Do you feel that things are moving faster than they were this time last year?
I feel like things are moving faster. I don't know if we're headed for the singularity. I oscillate wildly between, wow, we're nearly there. AI is incredible and it can do amazing things, and it's just going to make, it's going to surpass us any moment now, and it's going to be incredible. And then I go back to, no, hang on, this thing barely works at all. So this is never going to surpass us. We're not going to reach AGI. I oscillate wildly between the two. I think a lot of people do. And I think part of it is that situational unawareness. We're not, we don't have the technological understanding to know exactly where we are. And we don't have the behind the scenes view that some people in AI companies do. And so I find myself having to kind of, take their word for it, which is very dangerous because they're private companies, and of course they're going to hype it all up.
Watch out for that. Actually, late breaking news on that too. And there was so much going on. The reason I ask is there's just so much going on again, right? And late break, I didn't even get a chance to put this on the sheet. Unitree, the people who make the robotics, have released another video of their robot, and it would scare the crap out of you. They have the robot, and it's doing cartwheels. It's able to jump head over heels, and it's doing chops, karate chops like that. And just the dexterity of it's incredible. $30,000. And I'll just remind you, we have a mutual friend that I have bet on that one of these will be able to make a cup of tea and deliver it to you. I think I've got 2.5 years left. I'm totally winning that bet. Humans are just terrible at understanding exponentials. So
I saw one the other day. I saw a video of a robot the other day as well. And those videos that we always see of Boston Dynamics playing with their robots and like smacking them to try to get them to fall over, and they're really robust and they manage to stay standing. And apparently one of the reasons that they build them so that they can stay standing and withstand all that abuse is that it's very hard for a robot to get up from the floor, apparently. And I saw a terrifying video of a humanoid robot who has no problem getting up from the floor. The headline was something like, when you watch this robot come back from the dead, you will never sleep again.
Problem is in your social media feed, because in my feed it has exactly the same video, and it's like, wow, look at this cool robot. But it's interesting because I do notice in all the robot feeds, that's obviously why they show, because they always show them getting up. And I'm just looking at it going, that looks a bit scary, but kind of cool. But they're technically showing off. It's kind of like, look at our cool robot. It can get up again, which I hadn't realized. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's been a whole heap of releases and announcements. Some very cool stuff coming down the line. Will we do like a quick run through of what's been released and what's coming?
You're the creative one here, but I feel like we should have some music in the background, and it should be like a 30-second segment where we sort of quickly run down. And this week we have, and it should be a quick fire.
In at number 3.
Exactly. We should have a countdown. All right. Well, I'll start with the first one. We can figure out how to. So this week, OpenAI released O1 Pro in the API, which is kind of exciting news. But the most eye-watering thing is the price. The price is $150 per million tokens in, $600 per million tokens out. And to put that in perspective, most of the other models would cost less than a tenth and perhaps 1/100th of that price. Very expensive.
Right.
So that's very good. I'll keep going then. A new model called Exoane 32 billion has been released. This is another example of the reason I was asking about the speed of things. So we talked a couple of episodes before about distillation. So you get a big model to train a small model. And this is another example of that. This model, they've got a 7.8 billion parameter version, and it beats O1 Mini. You could fit it on this USB stick, and it has all the intelligence that humankind has ever had on a USB stick. Mistral released the Mistral are the French AI company. We all need to be getting behind Mistral. They released a new model this week. Go Mistral. The reason this is important is we need Europe to make more models, which is great. Linked to this, LG, the company that make fridges, they make TVs, they make all sorts of nice consumer electronics. They also released a model this week. The model beats DeepSeek, which is incredible, right? It's a thinking model. The reason it's incredible is because LG make TVs, they make fridges, they make all those things. They are a big company, but they're not an AI company. They're just a regular company. If they can do it, so can Europe. Europe get out and build more models. Very important that we get on that train. Eddie, you must have some things too, Frank, surely.
Well, I spotted that the Chinese version of Google, Baidu, they released an open source model called Ernie. There was an Ernie X1 and an Ernie 4.5. Again, claiming that it outperforms a lot of the current models that are out there, and doing so at, again, half the price. And the article that I saw was just making the point also that it's open source, and that China seems to be kind of leading the way with open source and really kind of pushing the open source boundaries, which is pretty interesting.
Any thoughts on why they might do that?
I don't know, actually. I was thinking about that, and I honestly don't know. I mean, I was listening to a podcast, one of Lex Friedman's 75-hour podcasts. And the guys on it were saying that they were actually talking about DeepSeek at the time, but they were just saying that the leaders in DeepSeek are just very pro open source and believe that it's the way forward and believe that it should be available to everyone, etc. So I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting. I do think there's a network effect as well. So if you're trying to, I suspect there's a push. So if Europe was to finally get on the AI train and they need to do it really, really quick, you would go open source and you would, incentivize the universities to release lots of papers, all that sort of stuff. And I think there might be something like that going on as well. Also, I noticed then this week, OpenAI and Anthropic have released connectors. This is kind of the opposite to the open source argument, right? So the open source argument is release everything, make everybody aware of it, right? Blah, loads of good reasons. I'm actually on that train now, right? I think things should be open source. But one of the things against it is OpenAI and Anthropic have both released connectors. So within your account, you can say, connect my account to Google Drive, or connect my account to Slack, or connect my account to Power or SharePoint, or one of those things. It's interesting because they have an obvious advantage. It's the one place where in let's say a corporate environment, those guys should win, because it's hard for me to buy an open source tool that I will trust that can then again plug into my private documents. Whereas if Microsoft come along and say, here's your open AI model, here's SharePoint, we guarantee that users can only see the data that they're supposed to see. It's all baked into our environment. They'll win, right? That's what corporates will use. So that's one place where open source won't be used. But an exciting week and more of that to happen in the future. The connections are going to be a big deal.
That's very cool. I mean, I really like that. I mean, right now, if you have a paid ChatGPT account, you can hook it up to your Google Drive and you can get it to look at very specific documents, etc. But the idea that you could actually just hook it up to your Google Drive in general and have that be one of your primary sources of information, you don't have to choose the document. You just say, go and tell me what our company thinks about X, Y, Z, whatever. And similarly, with the Anthropic one, I think the demo I saw was somebody working on a project and giving it access to the entire project folder and then saying, look at this project and tell me where the security issues might be in this coding project. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The last release, and this is the one that exploded on my LinkedIn feed. So I think it was at the end of last week, I started to see the Gemini Flash 2.0 posts start about how it was brilliant at image editing. But it was just this week we actually got a chance to have a look at it. And I ran a little experiment and I gave it an image of myself and I said, what would I look like without a mustache? And it came back. it was pretty cool. It came back. It's got rid of my mustache. I don't have it handy enough to share it here now, and anyway, people listening wouldn't be able to see it. But check out my LinkedIn feed. I've put it up on my LinkedIn feed, so people can
Just
check it
do
out there.
this.
But it took the mustache off. But I looked at it and I was like, well, that's pretty cool, but my glasses are missing. So I said, why did you remove my glasses? And it said, oh yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. Oh, that was a bit silly of me. Okay. Tell you what, here's another image with your mustache removed, but your glasses still in place. And it gave me another image. My glasses were still gone. And now I was bald.
Oh, that's so funny.
I said, what? And it said, "Oh, you're right. I've done something really stupid. I didn't mean to do that. That is not what you asked for. I'll fix it. I'll fix it. Here is the image with your mustache removed and your glasses in place and everything else the same. And it just took away all the rest of my hair and made me look really weird."
I know we've talked before about these models, are they sentient or not, but that's totally like something a child would do to take the mick out of you.
Oh,
It's,
100%. It felt like it was trolling me. Now I
oh,
think, I've been playing with it since, and I think what happens is like if you ask it to do something, it'll edit an image, but then once it's on that track, it's like it can't, unless you say specifically, stop what you're doing, generate an entirely new image, then it kind of has to work from it, or it seems to work from the last image it did. So it just keeps making the issue worse and worse and worse. What's interesting about the model though is that to be honest, like I saw some incredible images on LinkedIn where people were doing photo editing with it.
yeah.
But they're obviously cherry picked because it's not as good an image generator as a lot of the diffusion models like Midjourney or DALL-E, etc. But what's interesting is that it's baked right into the LLM. So it's not like if you use ChatGPT, you're putting in a prompt and then ChatGPT is interpreting that prompt, sending it to DALL-E, and then bringing you an image back from DALL-E. So it's a whole separate system. This is baked in. It's actually doing it within the system. So fingers crossed, the
I'm
results will
surprised,
actually get better.
I'm surprised you're not more concerned about this model being a creative type. A little bit disappointed, if I'm honest. Um, there was a lot of concern during the week that it was being used to take the copyright watermarks off images, and it seems to do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, this is an image. This is an issue. There are other issues. So I was actually reading that OpenAI apparently ChatGPT 4.0 actually has this capability, but they have not rolled it out. And the article that I was reading was kind of debating whether this was because it was expensive to run the queries and to bring the images back, or were they concerned about safety? So were they concerned about, making deepfakes easier, putting in an image of a politician and saying, great, now add hookers and cocaine. So,
Yeah,
these things are definitely issues. Watermarks, I mean, watermarks were never really that difficult to remove. So I don't know why people obsessed over watermarks. But yes, there are definitely security, there are definitely safety issues around this.
I think it falls under I mean, Ethan Mollick, who's the professor, was saying during the week, it was a nice point that it seems like stuff that was very what do you call this? The Overton window. So the stuff that was shocking a year or two ago is much less shocking now. So a year or two ago, we created pictures of kings and queens who were brown and pink and yellow and all sorts of colors, and people thought that was terrible. And nowadays, you can create an image with hookers and cocaine and a politician and remove all the watermarks, and everybody's like, yeah. And so it's like we're becoming enamored, immured, we're becoming desensitized to what's possible. And I don't know. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing, but I also think that it will resurface again, because I feel like we're still in this little filter bubble. So, you and I and Ethan Mollick, of course, we're not. We can't. We can't wake up every day, and be concerned about this issue and talk about it every day and
I
post
never
about it
wake up and be concerned about it, Frank. That's the difference between you and me.
But I think that I think that the general public are still not really fully aware of these issues, and I think there will be a resurgence of concern when it reaches an even broader consciousness.
Wait till they hear that I can take over their computer with an image. So
Oh,
this was another story that, yeah, this is one of my favorite stories. This is absolutely going to happen. And if you're talking about the dangerous use of AI, the creation of these images is in fact a dangerous use of AI, right? Something that you want to watch out for, much more so than hookers and cocaine or whatever politicians. So agents, we know this year are a big thing. This was a story you brought to my attention, really interesting. So agents are a big thing, and we have these agents now which have their own baked-in computers, right? So they have controlled. It has a virtual computer that it uses to go off and do its work for you. And what these researchers demonstrated was that they could seed an image. So they could put an image on Twitter or something like that, and there is encoded data within the image. So when the agent is going and it's browsing, and in this case, it was looking for some social media content, the image would then instruct the agent. So the agent would see the instructions, but the human would not. And it would then go and repost some Twitter content, and it would put you through an adult website, and God knows what else it could do. Steal your credit card details and make your Tesla crash. Who knows? All sorts of, the world would end. Literally, the sky would fall down because of a picture. And
and
uh,
this, I'm just going to interrupt for a sec because this absolutely boggled my brain because, you know, you and I have probably come across before having actual code embedded in like a JPEG or a PNG or something like that. But
yep,
this is actually managing to instruct an AI agent just through the visual of the image. So it's only when the AI agent like takes a screenshot in order to interpret the image that it then is made to perform these instructions that could be malicious. So they're literally because I had ChatGPT explain this to me, by the way. I'm just going to admit now. They
brilliant.
basically manipulate the pixels in such a way that because the AI agent doesn't see the way you or I see, it interprets the image numerically. It breaks it down and interprets it numerically. By manipulating the pixels, they basically make this like numerical interpretation turn into malicious prompts. That is insane.
It's cool, isn't it?
Insane and really dangerous.
I think it's, look, it's fine, right? So let me tell you a story. Many, many, many years ago, I was working in Bank of Ireland, and I was told to test the very first version of banking online. I was given the job to go and test it and see if I could break it. And in that, you could put in a check number, right? And you could go search for a check, which you can still do, I think, today, which is incredible because nobody writes checks. And what I discovered was, because I have always been a bit of an awkward little nerd, right? At the check number field, I think it was 12 characters long. And it was just long enough for me to type in a piece of HTML to make that 12 characters, 20 characters. And then I had more. And then I could put in from 20 characters. And I remember, because I didn't think it was that dangerous, I remember going to my boss and saying, "Would you look at that? Isn't that cool?" And they went crazy. And then, oh my God, it's a prompt injection attack, right?
Yeah.
And so there it is. So Justo discovers prompt injection attacks when he's 21 or 22, and that was very exciting. They just fixed it. It's a bug, right? You just look for, you just, you mask it and whatever. It's an engineering issue, and this is an engineering issue too. So it's cool. It's mind-boggling, and this is one of the reasons why you want your models to be open source, because people will go, "Oh yeah, look at that attack," and then people get together and they figure out how to stop it. Not a big deal. You can sleep easy tonight, Frank.
Well, I hope you're right.
Yeah, well, look at, there we go. Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about AI tearing companies apart. This is another story
Yeah.
that you brought to my attention. This one is particularly close to my heart.
So
What's
this
going on?
this was research from Writer, which is an enterprise AI startup, and they did this research and they basically found that executives are pushing AI as an inevitable revolution, but workers aren't buying it. And it went on with all these statistics about how basically the difference between workers and executives and how it's tearing companies apart. And for example, one of the stats was 59% of the executives said that they were actively looking for a new job with a company that was more innovative with generative AI. And I mean, actually overly surprised when I read this, because you kind of get this sense out there when you're looking into AI and looking into how it's being adopted in companies. You definitely get this general sense, and um,
Sense of what now, Frank? What sort of a sense are you talking about?
a sense that there might be a push for AI from the top, but
Yeah,
in companies, employees can be quite resistant to actually using AI, or getting on board with this idea that AI can make every company more effective. And
I see. Okay, because I was confused by that. That's interesting because I was reading this and was going, yeah, C-suite executives had been whatever, and they were trying to move to companies that were more forward-looking for AI. And I was thinking, but you're an executive, surely you're the one who's defining the forward-lookingness of the company. Like, what the hell? Just be more forward-looking yourself, and that's your problem solved. But what you're saying is that it's the employees are giving pushback
it
again.
seems to be that's how I read it anyway, that there was a lot of that there was a lot of pushback, a lot of resistance.
That makes a lot of sense, right? And now, what I would sense, right, that it might be very dependent on the type of industry that you're in. So I wonder, and the type of employees you have. So I think that I don't know how I described AI today. Now I was talking to somebody. Um, I think that there's a lot of fear in certain companies about AI taking jobs, which I think is
100%.
not unreasonable, right? That's my honest opinion. But the way I described it is, I said, look, this is like we're all like 50 or 55, and the year is 1995, and we all know about the Y2K bug. It's like it's there, it's coming, it's unavoidable. It's somewhere between 3 and 5 years away, but there's a dog load of work that has to be done between here and there to make sure everything's going to be fine. So don't be worried about getting rid of your job, right? It's not going to happen for ages, and there's loads of money to be made between here and then. So it's grand. You'll be fine, and we'll figure it out. Whatever happens in the 1st of January 2020, we'll have a look and we'll see. Wouldn't be worried about it. There you go.
That I mean, yeah, it's an interesting take, but I think the thing I would push back on is, I think you said there, we'll my issue is that if we can't do anything. Like, if you are an employee in a company, you can't really do anything about it necessarily. You don't have the power to retain your own job. And so if we're not pushing for AI developers, and if we're not pushing for regulation, if we're not pushing for someone to keep an eye on these AI companies and make sure that it goes back to what we've talked about before, where AI companies are basically right now saying, give us everything, give us the infrastructure, give us your copyrighted material. We'll give you an ill-defined utopian future sometime, maybe, possibly. And so to me, it kind of sounds like you're saying, yeah, it'll be okay. It'll be fine. If you
Yeah.
don't have a job, you'll have, a universal thriving income to look after you.
You
But
got
if we don't put those in place, we won't, and we
Yeah.
won't have a job, and we won't be looked after. So
Well,
that's my concern.
what I think is interesting is though is that there and okay, so I don't disagree with that terribly, right? I disagree with the outcome, right? The outcome is going to be great, right? But I do accept that the bit in the middle, the difficult teenage years, is the problem. And so why this report is interesting to me is that it says it's tearing companies apart. And so again, this comes back to my thing about it feels like things are moving faster. There is now starting to be tension in companies. These are all the things that you would expect to feel at the start of what is likely to be quite a difficult transition period.
Yeah,
And then
I
it's
mean,
fine, right? But yeah, it's just interesting from that point of view.
and in terms of those tensions, I mean, there was another stat that caught my eye, which was that it said 41% of millennial and Gen Z employees confessed to sabotaging their company's AI strategy by refusing to use AI tools or outputs. Um, I just thought that was a really interesting stat, and just in terms of like what they're actually talking about when they're saying tearing companies apart. So you've got resistance from workers, you've got people feeling like they're doing like quiet sabotage by not using the tools the way they're meant to, and ending up with these C-suite execs just thinking, I need to get to a company that's more AI innovative.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? They're Luddites, basically. I mean, that's where the word Luddite comes from. And when you think about it, the people at the computer, if you're, if you suspect that there's AI on your computer, and when you're typing stuff in, it's learning what to do based on your actions. You might be correct today, but I don't think it'll be too long until you're probably correct. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think those Gen Z people, I didn't even know who a Gen Z person was, Frank, until about 25 minutes ago. But a Gen Z person is between the ages of 15 and 25. And in fairness, they're the people that have most to lose, because one of the big fears in the job market, I've read a number of reports on it now, is it's not that everybody loses their job at the same time. It's that attrition uh, reduces the job market over time, and companies don't hire people to replace those that have left. And so the biggest losers in that scenario are the Gen Zers, right? The Gen Zers. So, I mean, I think that's probably not unreasonable from them. Listen to me. There's a story here that's really annoying.
Go on.
It's the one about the search people, and they're saying, "Oh my god, I can't cite articles again."
Okay, so let's talk about. I'm really curious to hear why this annoys you so much, because I thought this was fascinating. So the
Yeah.
Tau Center for Digital Journalism conducted tests on 8 generative search tools, and
Hmm.
they basically gave it some quotations from articles, and then they asked it to go away, find the article, find the headline, find the publisher, the publication date, and the URL, and then they ranked them on how much of that they got right. And they said collectively, they provided incorrect answers to more than 60% of queries. So the things they found were that the AI tools were bad at declining an answer when it doesn't have the info. Now, they were surprised by that. I don't know why they were surprised. We know this about LLMs. They don't say, I don't know. Premium chatbots were
Can I
more.
stop you there? Because I'm already getting annoyed, right?
Go on.
So they don't say "I don't know" unless you tell them it's okay to say "I don't know." So what this story is telling me is that they asked an LLM to do something by giving it terrible instructions, and guess what? The LLM was terrible at doing it. That's actually
Why do
what
you
this.
say why do you say terrible instructions?
Because in the system prompt, when I'm asking an LLM, a language model, to do something, if one of the golden rules is always give it an out, right? So explicitly stated, if you do not know the answer, respond with and tell it what it should do. And if it doesn't know the answer, that's what it'll do. But these people clearly didn't do that. And in fact, they didn't do it so much that they were surprised that the LLM didn't say, I don't know what the answer is, when they didn't tell the LLM that it was okay for it to say, I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I don't think that's fair. I mean, they were doing research because of this idea that people are moving away from search engines and starting to use chatbots instead, and they wanted to see, what what is the average user's experience essentially. Um, Now they're totally transparent in the study. They do say, this isn't an exact replica of what somebody would do in the real world, because they wanted it to be kind of like scientific, and they wanted to use the exact quotes to remove any um, doubt from the equation. And they used queries that, if you popped them into Google, the correct result was always in the top 3 results. So the average user is never going to say, you know, here are some additional parameters that I would expect to be um, already in your instructions. So
Okay, so where we come to, right, is another universal truth, I think of it, which is this is an engineering problem. So they I will accept, right, that yeah, the average user isn't going to do the things that I've said, right? So that means that the products themselves have not been properly engineered, the ones that they're using. And so what annoys me is that people say, oh, there you go, now AI is untrustworthy and you can't use LLMs for this because they always hallucinate. They don't, right? There's loads of strategies that you can use to stop them from hallucinating. And the one thing I keep saying to people is that, an AI project is just an engineering project that has an AI component to it. And actually, the AI part is the easy bit, and the engineering part is just traditional engineering. That's the hardest part and takes you way longer than you expect. And that's what's going on here, right? The products they're using to make the test, either they haven't put in the prompt themselves, or the products they're using hasn't been fully developed yet in order to get out
no, but
these hallucinations.
these were the frontier models of today. These were, I mean, they used Perplexity, they used Grok 3, they used, I forget the entire list now. So what, I mean, I was not surprised that they found these things, but what I was surprised at was that they put it at 60% of the results were not complete or correct. I mean, that seems like that just struck me like as a very, very big number. I'm not surprised that there was hallucinations. I mean, I would push back on you a bit and say, you're saying that or even the saying I don't know, that
Yep.
like I think that is baked into LLMs, that they want to appease us, they want to please us. They're never going to say I don't know. I mean, even if you tell it that it can say it, I still think you're going to get hallucinations rather than it coming back and saying I don't know. You might do it less of the time, but I think hallucinations and the need to provide an answer are just baked into LLMs completely.
I'll point you towards some research that was done this week. And what they did was they got an LLM to generate, I think it was 200 or 250 responses to a query. And then they got the LLM to look through all of the responses, and out of them, all the responses, pick out the right one. And what they discovered was that it could do it. It was able to recognize 114 were totally incorrect and they were the wrong path. These ones weren't quite correct. That was the right one. And it was another way to reduce hallucinations. And again, my engineering brain says, well, that's brilliant. Let's just do that, but also stick in there hard code an answer which says, I don't know. And as the LLM is going through all the answers, if I don't know is the right answer, that's the one it'll give you. These are engineering problems, and um,
Yeah, and I did see that research, and that looks absolutely fascinating. It's like yeah, that was absolutely fascinating. But I guess in terms of where we are now, I think it's still really important for people to realize that yeah, 60% of these queries were incorrect.
I tell you the positive spin on what you've said for people is that if that's the frontier, if that's what the frontier labs are putting out there, again, there's enormous opportunity, right? There are solid ways for you to, a bit like, what was the name of the agent who were like, how the hell could this Chinese guy on his own basically come out with it? This is a green field. The world is
Yeah,
your lobster.
absolutely.
There are problems to be solved there that aren't
Yeah,
hard. You just have to pick the right problem and you can do it. So it's a very
yeah.
exciting time.
As you say, yeah, the first model that comes out that uses that technique that you just said, where it generates 200 answers and then figures out which is the right one. The first model that comes out that does that and hallucinates, at a much lower rate than any other model, that's gonna cause waves for sure.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. But there we go. Another exciting week. We got a voice cloner, Frank.
Yes, you sent me a link to this, and I think it might be the best one
Yeah.
yet.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it's some of the others that we've tested have turned out to be very funny. This one I was actually just pretty impressed by. Actually,
For just when
let's
you're
let's
lining that up, just for context, Frank is from most definitely the second city in Ireland, from Cork, and because Dublin obviously is the first city, and people in Cork have a very strong accent that most of the rest of the world struggle to understand, including AIs. And so most times these voice cloners make Frank sound like he's from London, sometimes from California,
yeah.
but never from Cork.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have a little bit, you can hear a little bit of an American twang here, although I am just back from a stint in Kentucky, so
Oh,
maybe
so
maybe I just had that naturally. And this is what's really interesting to me about this is I did two tests with this.
yeah,
I gave it the WAV file of my voice that I usually use for voice cloners, and it did a really good job, but yeah, I sounded more American. Then I used their 5-second cloning tool. So I was barely able to say a sentence before the time was up on the voice cloning. And it was better than when I gave it several minutes of my voice. So
interesting.
this is a clip from a previous episode that I always use to test. So let's have a listen. But for most people, I think they're going to be disappointed because this thing is its strength is reasoning. And even more specifically, they're saying its strength is reasoning in maths, coding and science. So, I'm a marketer. I don't really have any call for reasoning in maths, science, or and I don't often need any coding done by my AI. So I think for most people, they're not using AI in a way that requires reasoning. What do you think of
Frank,
that?
I think it gives you a bit more gravitas.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a little bit slower, it's a little bit deeper, and you've got a tinge of a D4 accent about you too. There, it makes you
yeah.
sound a bit pop.
But it's
um,
definitely, I think it's the closest in terms of cloning my voice. I think it's the closest I've come across so far. So it's
I would say the only thing that's wrong. That's very very good, right? I would say the only thing with that is the pauses were a bit too long and it was a little bit stilted. If it was more natural the way that it came out, and we know that there are other models that do that, I think it would have you. And that's from Frank. Are you not scared by this? That I can record 5 seconds of your voice and then I can go access your bank account and all sorts of things.
absolutely, I totally
And
am. It goes back to exactly what you were saying about, Ethan Mollick saying that we're getting desensitized. I mean, all those stories about people handing over money because they thought that their child was kidnapped because
yeah,
they received a call. I think it's probably going to resurface. I think we're going to see a lot more cases of it. So yeah, absolutely scares me. I'm just kind of tired of saying, oh yeah, but this is scary.
I know, Frank, but you know what it is? I mean, you keep saying, "Oh, this is terrible. Terrible things are going to happen." No bad things have happened so far. So I think that's just a one. Frank 0.
Well, I mean, you say no bad things have happened so far, but we've had cases of people transferring millions of dollars that they shouldn't have because they thought that their boss had told them to.
The phishing attacks. They were emails. They weren't voice cloning attacks yet.
No, there was a Zoom. There was a Zoom. So it was actually a video AI voice clone. Um,
Fantastic. Is that brilliant?
yeah, yeah, it's not brilliant. No.
What a time to be alive. All right, on that joyous note, Frank, pleasure as always. Let's hope something slows down because there's just too much news. I'm going bolder and grayer every day.
Well, Gemini Flash 2.0 is making me bolder all the time.
It's all right. Take it easy.